Welcome everyone to Endeavor Evolve. So, Evolve is a journey that we started before a year. It started with an on ground event, and we have been doing Evolve online with speakers who are experts in their own fields. And for Evolve today, we have Mr. Partho Dasgupta. So, on behalf of the entire Endeavor team, I welcome you virtually, sir. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Um, Introduction while I was penning down, it has filled one entire sheet in my office, but I've tried to kind of make it concise. So, Mr. Partho Dasgupta is a general management professional with a leadership experience in various consumer industries and media management experience in print, television, and out of home. He was the first CEO of BARC India, and he's currently the president of the Advertising Club. He has earlier led startup teams, management teams at Times Now, Future Media, Economic Times, Times Multimedia, and various other organizations. He's an alumnus of IIMC, and he's here to talk to all our students and alumni about his journey, how it has been. And this would be a very, very candid conversation between Vivek Tuteja, sir, the CEO and chairman of Endeavor Careers, and Partho Dasgupta. So over to you, Vivek, sir, and looking forward to this very interesting conversation.
Thanks, Aditi. I welcome you, Partho, on the show. I hope you're doing fine.
Thank you. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, it's a long time.
I know.
As we were, get onto this, I would like to tell the students that many times one interaction does impact your life in the long term, and you really don't know at that point of time. So I met Partho maybe first time. I didn't even knew his name in my interview when he came at campus. Okay, and from there, this whole journey of somewhere, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and 1 year at times was always an entrepreneurial approach I got. And somehow, it has got me here. Else, on the same day, I would have been my dream company would have taken me to an international career altogether. So one conversation has such an impact on individuals. I hope, Partho, that this conversation with you impacts, at least these students and maybe as many as it can reach, and guide them in building their careers. So. Welcome to the show. So first up, straight away, because the students want to know, because my audience here, our audience here is mostly ambitious young girls and boys who want to be a CEO. Okay, they are all aiming to be a CEO someday, or want to be an entrepreneur or a CFO. So they are all aiming for CXO role. You have been in CXO role since I know you. Okay. So business head, CXO roles, throughout. So maybe 16 years I have known you. And so question number one, what does it take to be a CEO? Okay. And question number two, how does CEO mind works? How does it work? How it functions?
I don't know whether I can do justice to both of these by giving all the points, but I'll try. Let me try.
Yeah.
So, what does it take to be a CEO? I think one of the big things. Each field is different, but some principles remain the same in whether you are a CEO of a media company or a cement company or a machinery manufacturing company. Some things remain the same, which is basically first is about empathy for people. I think that's a very, very important thing, because ultimately people make an organization, and it is very important that you look after your people. Second would be being at the top of your game, because everybody is watching you. Your shareholders, your board members, your immediate direct reports. So everybody is watching you. So be on top of your game, which is not easy. The third big thing would be I think, be ahead of the curve and keep learning. And because at the end of the day, you, like for example, in my last job, what I can very clearly say is I never got trained on machine learning or AI or data analytics. For example, I mean, during our days when we studied, now these were even subjects, so to speak. But I used to guide a team which would be excelling in these kind of subjects. So basically, you have to be at one step ahead, not in knowing the nitty-gritties. I think it's impossible to know the nitty-gritties of every field, but at least you should be knowing the broad principles and how you can apply. So whether it be such subjects or whether it be what's happening in the financial world, because you will raise funds, you will do a lot of stuff. So you have to be ahead of the curve. I would say these are the basic three things. Your second question was about what was the second question?
How does CEO mind functions?
It's very complex. I can tell you it's very complex. I think one of the biggest things is that you need to listen more and talk less, because there's a lot of absorption that you have to go on doing, whether you're in an external kind of environment or in internal environment. The second big would be, I think, again, I would say about people, that the mind is always looking at how to make your people successful, and hence you also get successful. And third, look out for lots of threats. Basically, both externally, mainly externally. That if the environment is changing, if something is coming in different part of the world, which could affect your life as well, if it comes in your part of the world. So very forward looking and keeping up reading and learning is very important.
I'll stick to your second point here. So when you say that you have to build teams, and some way you have to mentor people and mentor teams and individuals. So there are two skills here. One is hiring. I consider one of the biggest trait, whether you are successful or not, as a CEO, would be your hiring skills. How are you, and how do you nurture and grow them? Because see, when people will come to you, they might have raw talent, but you would be identifying and growing them in a direction. So is there a process to it? How do you think, or how do you go about one, hiring, two, learning and development, or training the team forward as you grow and the company grows?
Yeah, I honestly think there is no formula to it, to be honest with you. It's not, you cannot teach it in a business school, so to speak, but definitely there's a feel to it. You get a when you speak to someone, and that's why I said listening is very important. When you speak to someone, you keep on trying to judge the spark in that person, not just by your content knowledge, by the content knowledge. I think it is more by the attitude. So more, I specifically give more importance to attitude in terms of a candidate, because if you have the right attitude, I think it's very easy to pick up the skills per se. So I think it's a field. That's what I said, that you can't. So you in a conversation you pick it up. And to the second part of your question, I think it's very important to give people their space and encourage them. I think encouragement is the key, basically, to make mistakes. Don't wrap them up if they make mistakes once or twice, but they should not make the same mistake twice or thrice. It is good to make mistakes once or twice and learn the ropes and keep encouraging them. I think in a way this formula works. At least it has worked for me.
Right. So very interesting. Let's go a bit deeper here. So now, if I look at your last innings, BARC, it was ground up, scratch. So when you make it look very simple, that it is hiring, interaction, but it's also a conception of the idea and building it, and then hire the right guys and build the team.
Yeah.
And something maybe you did the second time. You also did something very similar in Times Now.
Yeah.
Not sure if Future Media was also like this, but I have a feeling Future Media would have also been.
Yeah, it's also started from a corner.
Yeah. So if we look at it, so how does let's just focus on BARC and see how did you went about this, and then see if there is something parallel in your Times innings also, and maybe in the Future Media innings as well.
I think all of these are similar, to be honest, in a very different, at a conceptual level, these are very similar. See, the whole thing starts, especially since you mentioned BARC, the whole thing starts with a situation where for example, in BARC was a measurement company, and I have no clue of what measurement was. I mean, at the time when I was hired, so to speak, and we had no money, absolutely no money. I think, if I remember correctly, it was about 4 or 5 crores that we had in our bank, and the project cost, some media reports said when I walked in, would be about 500 crores. Okay, but it didn't turn out to be 500 crores. It was about 200 crores. But I'm just saying that. So there was the basic principle is in each of these is that there'll be a lot of gray. You have to figure out how much of it is black and how much of it is white. So as you go along, you start, you start from a place and then you start visualizing. Effectively, I think that's the skill of what should I say, a founder. Vivek, you are also similar now, for founder CEO, where you know the space and you get into the track and you start figuring out how much bumpy it is and figuring out how to maneuver the whole course. It is exactly like that. So in this case, since you asked for BARC, I think one of the biggest challenges was the technology part of it, because India had not seen that kind of technology before. So, and the kind of statistical talent that we required, India didn't have as much statistical talent. So we had to import. Effectively, we imported that talent per se. And one of my lots, the first couple of years went on hiring a lot of these kind of talent from whom we have good young statisticians out here who started learning, and some of them have grown up to be very good professionals. But we have imported a lot of talent. In terms of technology, again, I mean, those kind of technologies were not there in India. So some part of it we bought, some part of it we built. We shopped around across the world to figure out what to buy from where, which by itself was a big challenge by itself. So I mean, each of these, I think the basic thing remains the same, which is you have to figure out different parts of the system. I think this is what they teach you in your engineering schools, right? That you become analytical. I don't think when you study engineering, you study all kinds of Bessel equation and Heisenberg's principle and all that. But ultimately, what you apply is your analytical sense, right? You find a problem is thrown at you, you pick up what are the elements of it and try and solve each part of it and again bring it all together. So that's the essential skill, to be honest with you. I mean, that works in every other startup.
Still not got my perfect answer. So this really solves the puzzle. But see what you need to understand, Partho, that both these innings, let's talk about BARC, it was to imagine at that point of time, there were challenges always in time rating. It was not, giving the perfect solution. It was a good solution. And people had tried earlier to break or create something. And media, as you know, so much credibility is required, to pull off a rating agency in any case, and media specifically is high. Similarly, when the idea of Times Now happened, NDTV and your if you written off that there's no space for another English channel. The CNBC was a king. There was BBC. There was just before the launch, I think Sahara also launched, and your CNN IBN with Rajdeep also launched. So both of them, from the visualization perspective, also was very difficult. But amazing credibility has been built. So what I think significant work as a CEO in both your outputs have been, one, the credibility that these organizations have built. Oh, and it is lasting credibility, especially in case of Times Now. Okay, so just a bit more, because the credibility cannot be just so you get the best people also and the solution also. But I think there has to be more to the DNA to build this credibility over a period of time.
Yeah, so that's exactly where the people part comes in, to be honest. I mean, if you, you can't go 100% right on people, but even if you get 97% right, and you instill the whole culture, in the beginning, for example, in the Times Now journey, you have yourself seen what was the culture in the beginning of making mistakes, trying to figure out and doing the right thing, and or everybody being in it together. I mean, we used to be drinking together. We used to be working very hard through the night, sometimes together, right? I mean, I think that culture, I think, makes things happen. As I said, I mean, there are no formula to it. There's a feel to it. There's definitely a feel to it. So you keep on when everybody has the same focus or same objective in mind, and we are all similar people. Finally, it comes through. I think it is the magic that happens when people are all alike. And I
Right.
think that as a CEO, I think my job would have been more to align people to the same thoughts
Right.
and finding solutions
Right.
rather than doing anything else. You know.
No, but it also requires a lot of brand positioning and think time
Yeah.
because you are a
So the marketing part is only a small part in the whole thing, to be honest, but it's a very
okay.
important. Of course, it's a very important part. Once you have the product and the basic stuff in place, obviously you have to project yourself well. So in each of both of these ones and many others that I have done, one definitely needs to know how to market yourself extremely well. Find your own positioning. For example, even as I mentioned, the tech part in BARC, I think that was our positioning, that we were much superior tech than the rest of the world. So, and the usual, the marketing and positioning games happen even in that. So you have to be at conferences, you have to be at, because it's a B2B product, it's not really a B2C product. Times now was more a B2C product. So you have to be in the right conferences, you have to be in the right places to project the stuff, and you have to play. To be honest, you have to play your own credibility game very, very strongly. So whoever is the leader has to play that credibility.
Right. No. Got
Yes.
it. No, no, it's a complete picture. So when now we'll just go back to your childhood. Okay, suddenly because so now we see you have such a long successful career. Growing up as a boy, what were your dreams? How was it like when you were young? Because I think 80s in India or maybe 70s, in fact, for would be so very different. We've only seen it in TV channels. Okay, one. Secondly, what kind of dreams you had? So,
So to be honest, you're right. I mean, those days the exposure to the world was very, very less. Okay, I mean, I still remember I grew up in a very middle class background in Kolkata, and but in a very good school, which was very much into academics, not much into anything else, but a huge number of students passing out. I think one of the things that made me what I am was this whole, in my school those days, it could have gone up only nowadays. If anybody here is from Kolkata, they would know there's a school called South Point High School, which in our times, every batch would have 700 students. So board exam we are giving is about 700 students. So it's the struggle for existence, the learning of how to struggle to exist and to make your head shown started there, I would rather think. I think the next big one I would think was, yeah, when I was studying, I think engineering, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know how many of you have read. There's this book I read, I still remember, by this gentleman, Lee Iacocca. He was the CEO of Ford and the CEO of Chrysler later. I mean, I think that was a big turning point in my, because those days, you didn't see so much TV. Okay, I mean, there was hardly any TV, a bit of movies, but you were not exposed to so many careers and so many books, so to speak, and so much of stuff that you get to see today. No internet, of course. So I think that book by Iacocca kind of made a lot of difference to my life when I realized, and I was studying engineering. I think that gave me a lot of, so to speak, ambition, you would say, inspiration, you can also say, because I thought those days I was very clear that I would join sales, because sales was not really looked upon in a very different way at that time. And I realized that sales is very important to start your career with, because either you be in sales or be in production, you have to do something on the ground effectively when you start your career. Don't start from the air-conditioned offices, so to speak,
Right.
to get that perspective, which you will later need in life. So I would think all of this played a big part in, and obviously being not from a very extremely well-to-do kind of economic environment also gives you a bit of a kick, should I say? So, if you have dreams, you need to buy it yourself. So that helps. That helps in my view.
When did this transition, according to you, happened in your graduation, that you suddenly realized that you're more ambitious than others?
Yeah, I would think so during graduation days, and I was ambitious, but at the same time, I was very clear I'm not getting into post graduation in engineering. So
Okay.
yeah, I was very clear. So I wouldn't. Those days there used to be. I think, I think it's still the gate is
Mhm.
the thing for doing MTech and all
Yeah.
that. I never sat for that. So I was very clear in third year that I have to crack the campus interviews, and I think I was the first person to get a job in the campus in the batch.
Right.
Four of us, if I may, if I remember correctly.
Mhm.
Third year, mid third year, or I think it was December of the year, whatever. So we had jobs, and after that it was a cakewalk because last 1 year you don't study and don't you just enjoy
Correct.
life. So
Yeah, those things don't change in college.
yeah, it should be the same. So I think yeah, you are right. During the graduation days is where it started. The reality started dawning on me.
Right. So then, how did MBA happen? Because you went into a
I
campus job, and how did you realize you want to get into MBA?
Yeah, so my first job was Union Carbide. Okay, I
Yeah.
mean, it was a very blue chip US multinational those days. Of course, I joined them post Bhopal, so don't ask me any Bhopal questions. I don't know.
Yeah.
So one should be clear. So it was a great company to learn. I mean, and I was put in the materials department. I still remember because the group HR head thought that my commercial sense is better, and I was not too keen on typical engineering maintenance jobs, which happen in factories. And I was in Hyderabad and Kolkata, and that is when I think it started before, but that is also when I realized that, to be honest, that engineering jobs don't pay. Engineering industry doesn't pay beyond a point, and you need to switch and do some pivots in your career so that. And one of the things was that you need to do an MBA, an MBA from a good school. Otherwise, it's not so important. So yeah, around that time.
MBA in 91, you know, how many seats were there in India?
No, no,
Maybe,
there were quite a few seats. The see
ABC would be 120 seats each, I guess.
150, if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken. Yeah,
Okay.
something like that. Yeah,
Mhm.
quite around that. So in a way, obviously the number of people who were trying to get in also must be lower than now, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But it was even those days it was very competitive. I still remember it was very competitive because also the opportunities those days were much lesser. Don't forget that because now, see, at that time, consulting and investment banking were considered the biggest ones, the so to speak, the top placement kind of things. The whole tech sector had not appeared. Okay, the what you get today, the TCSs of the world and all that were coming in engineering campuses, but the
Mm.
whole numbers games were quite different. Both the demand supply numbers games were different. So the opportunities, I think, now are much better. But yeah, number of seats were much lower at that point
Mm.
of time. To that
Right.
extent, was
So, how was your IIM Calcutta experience? What kind of impact did it have?
uh,
How was IIM Calcutta in 90s? Early 90s. How was it?
it was I would think it's as good as today. I went there recently for some. Uh, uh, they have published a whole case study on BARC, a strategy case study on BARC. So the first day they
Wow.
do the class with the students.
Mm.
They invited me to be in the class. So the some of the old blocks are the same, but now much better infrastructure. I could see that some very swank buildings and stuff like that. I would think the life is the same. I mean, whatever I could pick up, I was chatting with some students and all that. Life still remains the same. Uh, yeah, so I don't think too much has changed apart from the people there and some amount of better facilities and that kind of thing. I mean, the canteen remains the same, which is where you spend most of the time. So that kind of thing.
How did IIM Calcutta impact you, change you, transform you, and how it has gone over the years? And maybe if some lessons would have been you would have carried for life. So what was the key change you saw that maybe IIM Calcutta made in you from the long term perspectives?
See, this is why I also wanted to do an MBA, to be honest, and I think which is what the IIMs deliver, which is they give you a great perspective. What you would have, I think, if you had not done a IIM thing, I mean, you would have taken 10 to 12 years to understand how the industry works. The perspective of people, the perspective of finance perspective. So that whole thing, I think, especially IMC was very much quant, right? I mean, it is, they get a lot of more engineers in the batch and it was very quant oriented. So I think and that slight bit of kida in me, if I can say so, of having a creative side, which is what made me do both finance and marketing, and ultimately I preferred to get into the marketing side more. And thankfully see how the world has rolled out. I mean, there's a lot of quant in marketing now. Earlier, creativity meant mainly advertising and stuff like that. Now it is not just advertising, it is a lot of data science. There's a lot of other things that play. So it gave me, I think the biggest thing that it gave me was the perspective. I think which I'm really thankful for, because that keeps you running faster. You know why one is saying at that level. I'm just saying why one is saying what is they are saying. So it just helps you. That's it.